how much work Marco put into this one as well as he does all of his work. I didn't choose to do all of the bells and whistles. His print is actually really well done as well. So this is a mystery maker. We're going to jump into that right now.
Countdown to on air, TV and music off. Places, sound speed,
on the set.
camera speed, printed prop shop, thermal detonator. Market 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to the Print Prop Shop. Welcome back to the Print Prop Shop. It's been a while, I apologize, but apparently this channel has drummed up some business for me, so that's what I've been busy doing, actually printing for people. So today is a pretty special one. I'm going to show you the process of what I did. A gentleman contacted me, and apparently I found out that I'm one of the, if not the only, but one of the few 3D printers in the whole area. Saw some videos and found me on Google and came to me with a question of, could I go and take an object that was already made and print out a secondary object? The big thing is his son had created this statue, and it's similar to this. This is not the actual product that I gave him. Clients already picked it up and everything, but I wanted to do a video on it still, and I didn't get the intro and outro done during that time. I wanted to get it back to him. But this is similar to what it looks like. His son made it in his childhood, and his son is since grown now, and it was made out of styrofoam, wire, looked something similar to like paper mache on the outside, and it was deteriorating, falling apart, and it was leaning back similar to the way this is right here. The ones I actually printed out for him, I straightened out, and you'll see them in the pictures that I'll provide at the end. But it was just falling apart, and he wanted to be able to take that and put it maybe in storage where it'd be safe, and maybe display a 3D printed one, just to say, hey, we have it, but we want to put the other one in storage. And he also wanted one that he could possibly cast in resin later on, or out of metal, which I thought was really cool. It's just not something that I do, so I wasn't able to provide that service. But I did find a couple of companies that are fairly close by, at least within 500 miles close by, that does that sort of thing. So I provided that to him as well. But I was able to take that original object and turn it into 3D print, and I wanted to share with you how I did it. So without further ado, here's how I did it. So these are a couple of pictures that I actually used to build the model with. And since I didn't have the original sculpture still with me, I wanted to show you just some pictures of it for comparison purposes. You can see it was really falling back and deteriorating. So everything I found said either white or black background with a lot of light. I will say that is one thing you need, is a lot of light and diffused light. So it needs to be very dull, not being able to cast shadows. I found this sheet set over Dollar General. I want to say it was maybe $5 or $10. I could have ironed it out a little bit more. That might have solved some of my issues as far as getting shadows. But for the most part, it worked out just fine, and it was a relatively cheap answer to my problem. I didn't really have too many issues. This did take me about 4 tries to go and get it. It was probably about 1,500 to 2,000 pictures that I took. And with this, I just opened up my camera app. I took them in ProRes on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. And I just turned it just a little bit each time. And then I started at the middle, I went to the top, and then I went down to the bottom so I'd get max coverage. I want to say it was about 300 to 400 pictures total to build the model. So I found this program on the Apple website. It is free. It's called PhotoCache, and it's completely free. It does a great job. Apple does have another way to do it through Terminal on Macs. It just seemed a lot more complicated than what it needed to be, or what I needed it to be. But as you can tell, it picked up a lot of other stuff. I think it was from shadows and things like that, and the turntable. But I wanted to export it into an object file so I could put it into Blender, so it'd be much more easier to manipulate. All those little white spots that you see on there, I could clean up in Blender, and I could use a slicer to cut out anything I didn't need. So now Blender, I am not 100% skilled in Blender. What I do know that I can use Blender for is to clean up this model. So that swoosh that was on the top, I could go and smooth that out with the sculpting tools. There are ways that you can delete things out and say cut off that turntable. Everything that I found was just a little bit out of my skill set at this moment. And I didn't figure that it was too much of an issue, because anything that was left over that I didn't need when I converted it to an STL, I could go and put it in a slicer and just simply cut it out. But I did want all of those white parts that were on the actual sculpture to get blended out. Cheap pop for Blender, blend it out. But I used the sculpting tools and was able to smooth those out. Some of the pieces on the original model I had to be careful with, because some of them are like that. It's a sculpture, so it's naturally going to have those different little aspects to it. Now it's time to upload it into Slicer. And believe me guys, there's probably tons of people out there saying you could have done this, you could have done that. It's so much easier all in one program. I just don't know of an all-in-one program that can do all of this for me. And I have all these free programs. So Slicer, I was able to cut out the turntable. That floating piece that you see out there that it wasn't needed, that was most likely a shadow cast or something. All I simply had to do was rotate the model and right click and just go to cut. It was that simple. Didn't have any issues as far as meeting up with anything. I knew it was a far enough distance from the actual sculpture to where I could just simply cut it out, and as you can see, it came out just easy as you could ever think of it. It saves so much time. The amount of time I was spending in Blender to try to figure out how to actually delete everything out was more time consuming than just this. And I did end up cutting it into 4 pieces. I cut off both arms. I cut off the torso just as it met the legs. I kept a little bit of the legs in it and put it onto my bed. The reason for that is my bed size. And I have a relatively large printer. I have 2 relatively large printers. But to maximize the size that I would have needed, the arms would have stuck out on the sides and they wouldn't have printed off. And there just wasn't a way to orientate it to where I could do that, so that's why I ended up cutting it into multiple pieces. And as you can see, I was printing this at a very, very fine layer height. With each one, I want to say the longest print was the actual base and legs, and I want to say that took about 3 days. So I'm glad I actually cut it into pieces. I did, like I said, I showed you in the intro, I printed off just a test base, and that was to show the client, hey, this is what I was able to do. And I printed it off at a very thick layer line, and he was already happy about it. Even though it wasn't the same size, I printed it smaller just to show him. And here's how it came out. And there it is, guys. So it did take me about 4 tries, and probably about 1,500 to 2,000 pictures. The actual model that I ended up building in PhotoCache really only took about 300 pictures, I believe. It didn't take a whole lot. And just go really careful with it. Slightly turn it. I believe the PhotoCache says that, or at least on the Apple website about all this, says that it needs 75% overlap, I believe it was. So that's how little you just turn it. Diffuse light, I can't express that enough. Try to get as much shadow out of there as possible. And if you can't get the shadow out, like I said, go into Slicer, cut it out. Or if you're really skilled at Blender, take it out in Blender. Maybe there's another program you know of that'll be able to do that. Maybe you're a good modeler that can do this. Me, on the other hand, I know a little about a lot. That's kind of what I always go with. But this guy, like I said, was the original test print that I showed the client. Just sent him a picture of it and was like, hey, I was able to do it. Always do a test print. I did end up straightening it out, as you'll see at the picture I show at the end. So it actually came out, I printed off 2 of them for him, one to display and one to mold or whatever you want to do with it. But when I took a heat gun to the back here and straightened it up, it was actually taller than the original sculpture. It was kind of funny. I thought it was going to come out much smaller, and really when I got it all assembled, it was marginally smaller. Like, you would have to pull out a measuring tape to say this was smaller than this. And so just take your time with it. Every program that I showed you I used was free, completely free. You can do this. All you need is your camera. Take the best resolution pictures you can. A lot of light, a lot of diffuse light, and just a little bit of skill. You can find all this on the internet just like I did. So I thank you for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.